This 2023 AFC South Player Props edition of the NFL Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by our Patreon. Score exclusive perks, content, and contests, including our NFL win totals contest with a $1,000 prize. Join today at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. We're also brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app to get last-minute tickets at the lowest price guaranteed. Use promo code SGPN for $20 off. Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is Monday, August the 14th, currently 5:10 on the East Coast, here to discuss another division for our season-long player props. And tonight, we're going to be discussing the AFC South. Joining me, I got my guys here with me. First, it's Chris B. Cappin. Chris, how you feeling this Monday afternoon, my man?
What's going on, Munaf? I'm excited, man. We finally starting to get just a tad bit of, the action, man. I was able to watch some of these preseason games, and you get excited about that, but it's not the same as the regular season, right? So, I'm excited, man. Excited to be here. Excited to talk over the props with you and Rod. Hopefully, we can give out some winners that we don't know will be winners for a while, but hopefully we can just give out some insight, to help people make better bets.
Yes, sir. A little appetizer of the preseason before we do get to the main course, just in about a few weeks till we, get to the regular season. But also joining us, one of the hardest working men in sports media and the gambling space, it's Rod Villagomez. Rod, how you feeling this Monday afternoon, my man?
I'm devastated that the San Francisco 49ers season is over. We lost to the Raiders in preseason. You could just pretty much pack it up. Whatever predictions I made for the Niners going into the season, throw them all away. Munaf, it doesn't matter anymore. We're losing the NFC. We're losing the West. It's over. I'm already pissed off.
Well, in that case, my Texans are going undefeated. We're winning the Super Bowl this year. So, sorry for you guys. The ring, we're getting our first ring in franchise history based off of week one. And CJ Stroud playing, attempting 4 passes and throwing interception. So, that's that. But, preseason week one in the book, some exciting games. A lot to take away from that. But, week 2 kicks off of the preseason this week, obviously. And then, lo and behold, week 3. And then, guys, before we know it, the regular season is going to be here. But like I mentioned, tonight we're going to be discussing the AFC South season-long player props for this division. And, this division, obviously, I think the 2 South division, I think you guys can agree, is probably the dumpster of the NFL, at least at this juncture of the season. Where these 2 divisions, they used to be competitive. Obviously, there's a youth movement going on, especially at the quarterback position for at least 2 teams and possibly a third team in this division. The Texans, obviously, like I mentioned, CJ Stroud going to be the starting quarterback for the Houston Texans with the 2nd overall pick in this past year's draft. Anthony Richardson, the 4th overall pick for the Indianapolis Colts. They've been kind of going through it with the quarterback carousel ever since the sudden retirement of Andrew Luck. I mean, they've brought in veterans like Phillip Rivers. I know Jacoby Brissett has started games for them last season, Matt Ryan. So hopefully for the Colts, and if you're a Colts fan, maybe Anthony Richardson hopefully is the answer for you at that quarterback position. And then for the Tennessee Titans, they have 2 guys in the wings right behind Ryan Tannehill, the names of Malik Willis and Will Levis, to possibly take over for Ryan Tannehill, whether that's at the end of the season, maybe that's mid-season. But we'll see. And then obviously the Jacksonville Jaguars right now with Trevor Lawerence, the defending AFC South champions, who had an incredible comeback in that wild card game against the Chargers when they were trailing by multiple touchdowns at the half, just to be led by a comeback victory by Trevor Lawerence and the Jaguars. But guys, let's kick it off here with our first player props. Rod, why don't you lead us off with your first player prop, man? What do we got?
We're going to turn to one of those young quarterbacks, and we are going to go with Anthony Richardson. I'm going to take the under on his passing touchdowns here. 15.5 is the number set. The under's at plus 105. And I know that there's high hopes for this kid. I know that he's talented. I know that the future of this franchise probably rests on his shoulders, but he's a rookie coming into a system that only yielded 17 total touchdowns last season at all between Matt Ryan, Sam Ellinger, and Nick Foles. All of them combined for only 17 touchdowns last season. And it is not as if this roster has improved very much offensively. I mean, Jonathan Taylor's still there. He's going to need to play a full season. He's going to need to be healthy this whole season if the Colts want to even stay competitive. I understand that, they're probably going to be needing to throw it around because they're behind, but throwing it around leads to yards. It doesn't necessarily always lead to touchdowns, or else they wouldn't be behind in games so much, right? Plus, like I said, this receiving core, not necessarily all that much improved from last season. They've got Michael Pittman there. Pittman only caught 4 touchdowns last season from that collection of quarterbacks. They've got Alec Pierce, who, Alec Pierce, if you follow them, he dropped the touchdown pass in the preseason game, so whatever. But they brought in Isaiah McKenzie to help shore things up, but even still, that was the number 3-4 receiver on the Bills last season. I don't think it's going to up the chance for Richardson to toss a whole lot more touchdowns this season. This is a learning curve. It's still a tough defensive division. So I think that he's going to get a very not so warm welcoming into the league. And I think he maybe hits 14 and 15, but I don't think he gets to 16 this season.
Yeah, a couple of things here why I like it. Number one, I'm also on an Anthony Richardson prop here on the under, and I'm taking the under on his passing yards. So it's very similar to correlate about what you said. That number one, it's a brand new head coach with Shane Steichen and for the Colts, and then you also have a rookie starting quarterback for your roster. That typically doesn't lead to a lot of success, right? And I know that they're probably going to throw Anthony Richardson out there to get the reps, to get that game experience at the professional level. But if he's not having a good season to start the year, he could be looking over his shoulder. Gardner Minshew, a seasoned veteran that they have on this roster, they probably brought him in for a reason here on this team. And, Gardner Minshew has had some success with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I know he was there with the Philadelphia Eagles last season as well. And I just wasn't really impressed with Anthony Richardson's game in the college ranks. I mean, I know at Florida, there were flashes of what he could be, but maybe the Colts saw something, and that's why they get paid the big bucks to draft that guy 4th overall. But I'm not sold on it yet. You mentioned Jonathan Taylor. I think this offense is going to be predicated on him. But you take a look at the skill positions, at least at the wide receiving group, right? They're ranked bottom 4 in the entire league. Michael Pittman Jr. last season had a great year, catches wise, and 925 receiving yards. You mentioned that the touchdowns weren't there, and this was one of the league's worst offenses, right down there with the Houston Texans, as far as yardage and scoring. So I think it's tough shoes to fill for Anthony Richardson to be the starting quarterback of any professional franchise. Like you mentioned, Ron, I think he's going to go through the growing pains as well. So again, like I mentioned, I won't be surprised if we see a Gardner Minshew maybe midway through the year or towards the tail end of the year. We always talk about injuries as well, right? I mean, I know he's still a young guy, but there's still that opportunity for a guy to get hurt. Obviously, you don't wish that on anybody, but and that's why we kind of do like under. So Rod's on the under for his passing touchdowns. I'm on the under for his yardage here. Chris, talk to us about Anthony Richardson. Your thoughts about him?
It's so funny because I heard Rod take the under on his touchdowns. So I was like, okay, he didn't steal too much of my shine. But then you followed him up, and you took his under on his passing yards, and I did too. So yeah, passing yards under. I mean, it's for a lot of what you kind of shed light to. The situation is key, right? The newness, not just him being in the league, but the coaching staff, the playbooks. He's gonna have to get adjusted to a lot. I watched that first preseason game, and we can't tell everything from a preseason game, but you just see bad mechanics, throwing off the back foot, through an interception. Weapons, that's a big thing as well. He doesn't have the most elite weapons. So I saw the number at 20, not pretty much 2,600, so 25.99 and a half. The under is plus 105, so you can get some positive money over on Caesars. Over on BetMGM, I think is why I saw the best number. So I won't regurgitate everything you said, but I would like to, just kind of re-emphasize some of those points that you made. So yeah, I think he's gonna have a good season as well. I do think he's gonna have a good season. I just don't think that he gets to this number. If I also think that he's gonna use his legs. Like this guy used to run a lot at Florida. So I like him to, be able to kind of help that offense. Maybe it improves just a tad bit, But you also mentioned Minshew just sitting on the sidelines, licking his chops when he's not having, the greatest, greatest performances, even if those come back to back or whatever the case might be. So I know they probably not trying to put too much pressure on him because it is his rookie year, but it's a lot of different things that could kind of fall, kind of lead him to fall flat on his face in this spot, especially being, just the newness, and his welcome to the NFL moment is coming here soon.
Yeah, and also to add to the point about this team, their offensive line now is below league average, where they had just a few seasons ago. This was one of the best offensive lines in the league. But now they're ranked number 18 coming into the season. We talked about the skill positions. The wide receiving group comes in at rank number 28, secondary number 31, and obviously the quarterback position, because you have a rookie quarterback starting at number 27. So I think to expand on what Chris said, that, yeah, I believe that Richardson is going to be using his legs a lot more to run the football and get yards that way for this Colts offense. So I think something maybe we look at the regular season. I know Rod and I cashed a lot of money on Justin Fields rushing yards over last season. I think Anthony Richardson kind of fits that mold for this upcoming season for the Indianapolis Colts. All right, guys, before we get over to our next player props, let me tell everyone about the newest sponsor on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. That's going to be Game Time. NFL season is around the corner, and you're a Homer fan. You support your local teams, and you want to get out there for the first game of the regular season in your city. You're excited for the season, or you have some type of comedy show that's happening at your local theater, or maybe you wanted to go to that Taylor Swift concert and you weren't able to get tickets. This is where Game Time comes in. Game Time's app is so easy to use. It's a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sporting events, concerts, any comedy shows that are happening in theaters near you. They have so many great things that happen on their app. They have some great deals on last minute tickets, and their best prices are guaranteed. You can stop stressing over tickets and start getting hyped for fun that you'll have. There's been so many times that you're planning to buy these tickets 3 months out, 4 months out, because you think they're going to get sold out, and you have to plan this event 3-4 months out. Where now with Game Time, you don't have to do that anymore. You can do it the week of, or even the day of. Like I mentioned, forget planning in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of for the event. You get exclusive flash deals on tickets for the football games, basketball, baseball, MLB playoffs are around the corner. Like I mentioned, concerts, comedy shows, and all that good stuff. The Game Time app also means that you'll always get the best price. And if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And the one thing I love about their app is that when you go to a specific sporting event or a comedy show, you can see the image of your seat before you even buy those tickets. So you know exactly what to expect when you arrive at the venue. So buy tickets in a matter of seconds. All you got to do is hit your screen 2 times and you're all set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you don't have to worry about them coming into the mail and having to dig around in your email either. It goes right there on that app. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, but make sure you use promo code SGPN for $20 off of your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem the code SGPN for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price are guaranteed. All right, boys, let's get over to our next player props in this division. Rod, lead us off, my man.
All right, we're going to go to Jacksonville, and we are going to take Travis Etienne's rushing yards. They're set right now at 950.5. Let's go over. I know that we love unders on this show, but I always tell you that if I'm picking an over, it's because I have a feeling that this is going to be very good. And not just that, but it's very good value for you too. This is coming in at even money at plus 100. So you're basically just getting a nice little double up on this if it hits the over. Travis Etienne, obviously, we know, missed all of his rookie season with an injury. Couldn't necessarily do anything there, but he came back for 1,125 yards last season. And that was with James Robinson starting the season. And we know how good Robinson was. He was a 1,000-yard rusher in his own right. So he comes in, takes over for him, and just gets 1,125 yards by himself. So I don't know why the number is set at 950. I don't know what necessarily the books are looking at. Are they thinking of a gigantic drop back? if all we're predicting is better days ahead for this Jacksonville offense, then why would their running back take such a giant leap back? I mean, that's almost 75 yards, right, to the bat of what he was doing last year. I don't think he's going to lose 75 yards in this. Not to mention, he's going up against a Texans defense, Munaf, your Texans defense, that has allowed 170. They allowed 170.2 rushing yards a game in the 2022 season. He's got 2 cracks at that. And he's got a Cleveland defense that has allowed 135 rushing yards per game last year. In and of itself, that's a pretty damn good schedule to have if you're a lone back for a Jacksonville Jaguar team that's looking for better things this season. So I think a path for 951 is highly doable for a talent like Travis Etienne. Again, I don't know why they're selling him so short when all he did was show his talent last season to get about 1,000 yards. So, yeah, I mean, again, 951 at plus 100. Sign me up for that, please.
No, Rod, I thought we were friends. I thought we were brothers, but you're just digging the knife a little deeper with how bad my Texans defense is. And I can't blame you. Last season, Travis Etienne against the Texans. And again, I know it's just 2 games, but 19 attempts, and this is combined, 180 yards are just right there off of the Texans. And sure, they're going to improve, but again, we talk about Doug Peterson's offense. Running should be a priority for this team. We saw it with the Eagles when he was there, that you need to have a balanced attack. And I think Travis Etienne's his ability, number one, to break tackles and just, put his foot down and just take off at the speed that he does have. I think that opportunity is going to be there for Travis Etienne. Again, like I mentioned, when you have a good running game, that takes pressure off of your quarterback. And I think Travis Etienne fits that mold very nicely. And he's going to be another guy. I think we talked about him last season as well on the Propcast on his total yardage on his receiving and rushing yards. I mean, he's great out of the backfield as well. I believe he had 316 yards during the regular season, catching the ball as well. And I know they added some depth through the draft, but again, you're expecting Travis Etienne to be that obviously the starter for this team. So, at 950 and a half, again, definitely shop around for the best number, because I feel like I saw this one lower. Excuse me. But Chris, thoughts on Travis Etienne for this upcoming season?
Yeah, I would. The number I think is pretty close, but I would lean towards the over. I just think that the opportunity will be there for him. Yeah. I think the one thing that you guys, not to reiterate everything you guys said, but I think when I was looking at Travis numbers from last year, the yards per carry were extremely high. Yeah. And that's what kind of scares me, right? That is a, per carry basis. So, we're not saying that every run is, going to be that long, but there's been a lot of runs that are longer, right? Which means that he has that breakout capability. And I think that would be the biggest reason why I would look towards the over rather than looking towards the under. Some of these numbers are a little off, it feels like. And I think that's the benefit of being able to kind of play on, at the beginning of the season, because a lot of people aren't interested in, tying up their money for too long. So you can get some real good value. I think this is a good one as well.
Yeah, last season, 5.1 yards per carry for Travis Etienne, and he had long rushes of 62, 49, 49, 48, and then 27 last season. So again, like, Chris mentioned there, that he has that breakout ability and using his speed to accumulate those yards for the running game for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Chris, take us over to player prop number 2, my man. What do you got?
So let's stick with the theme of running backs. And I think I also found a little value as well on an over. So, following in Rod's footsteps, Derrick Henry. I like not necessarily his rushing yards. I like his touchdowns though.
2
so
for 2.
Nine
I'm on this as well. Take it away,
really?
Chris.
Okay. So 9.5. I won't give out all of it. If I let you get a little bit on the back end, but 9.5 plus money. I actually found it at plus 100 over the weekend on Caesars when I was looking at this. And this is one kind of like what Rob was saying with Travis. It's like, wow, like, are we really gonna put this number this low? Did we like make a mistake? But 9.5 touchdowns. This dude has led the league in carries last season, almost 350 carries last season, 13 touchdowns last season. There's 5 consecutive seasons where he's had at least 10 touchdowns. So he's cleared his number 5 years in a row, which is crazy. You get Tannehill, who is probably I think it's safe to say on the back part of his career,
Sure.
11th season for him. This offensive line isn't great. So weak offensive line, I think, with no real, weapons outside of, bringing in the acquisition of DeAndre Hopkins, whose presence I think will also help, Henry in this spot as well. You also just look at strength of schedule. They have one of the easier schedules. I think ninth is what I have them rated at. And I think that Derrick Henry is the best weapon for this team if they're going to, be able to move the ball consistently. So he is a big, grueling football player for people who haven't watched him play before, that can barrel over you, can run past you. And I think that they lean into, another big season from Derrick Henry. Take it away, Munaf. What you got to add to that?
No, I mean, I agree with everything that you said there, right? Again, when we talk about running backs in this league, everybody expects after that rookie contract for running backs to fall off. But Derrick Henry, like you mentioned, he's just built different. I mean, he's a big, tough guy to bring down. And when we talk about goal-to-goal situations or even inside the 5, it's very difficult to bring this man down. He's just going to drag you into that end zone. And on the point that you mentioned, 5 straight seasons that he's had at least 10 touchdowns for the Titans. I mean, that just speaks volumes on the type of running back that he is. There was one season, I think he only played in 8 games, and he had, I think, still 10 rushing touchdowns for the Tennessee Titans offense. And again, I keep talking about how having a good running back takes pressure off of quarterbacks. But now for this Titans offense, you added a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, who, when healthy, arguably, I think he's a top 3, but definitely a top 5 wide receiver in the entire league. I think he has the best hands in the entire league as well. And he's just a reception machine. So that only gives another weapon to the offense of the Tennessee Titans and Ryan Tannehill. But again, just shitting on the Texans a little more. This guy's absolutely owned the Houston Texans last season. I mean, if you guys go through his game log, he's had at least, there's 4 straight games where he had 200 plus rushing yards against the Texans. And then last season, he took it easy on them in the second game that they faced. He only had 126. But at minimum, you're going to get at least 4 touchdowns when he faces the Texans. And again, that's almost half of it right there. So you also mentioned, right, they also do have an easier schedule this season. This entire division does. The more difficult schedule is for the Jacksonville Jaguars because they do play that first place schedule because they finished first in the AFC South last season. And again, if Derrick Henry is not even able to finish, I know he's coming off of injury as well, but I think in 14 games, this guy can get it done. So if he plays 13 to 14 games, I think Derrick Henry can get over this number of 9.5, especially add plus odds here at even money for Derrick Henry to get over this 9.5 rushing touchdowns here, Rod.
Yeah, well, I will go into that more in depth, actually, in my last player prop. So
okay.
I know we've got to probably hit a break, but yeah, I'm definitely down to. Oh, wait, do we have to hit another break?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. So let's hit that, and then we'll get into our last round of player prop. I think it'll give us a nice segue here into the Derrick Henry conversation. But hey, look, the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, we do everything for free. We give out our picks for free. All of our pods are free. Nothing is behind a paywall. And this is where you can, I know a lot of us have gotten messages from our followers and our fans on how can we repay you? Well, sign up for our Patreon to get access to exclusive contests, including the NFL win totals contest with $1,000 first place prize. But not only that, if you join the Patreon, there's a monthly SGP Stories podcast that's completely ad-free, a full behind-the-scenes stories about SGPN. There's always a Discord as well to come chop it up with all the Patreons that already are that have signed up. There's weekly contests that are happening as well. I know we had 2 over the past week where there was MLB games, where there was NFL preseason. We've been mixing it up. Last week, there was a mysterious prize that was given out. We're still trying to figure out once that person receives it on what that's going to be. But hey, this is a great way for you to support the network. Get all the details over at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. Again, make sure to go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. Talking more about Derrick Henry, me and Chris are on the over 9.5 for his touchdowns. Rod, you are also leaning towards Derrick Henry possibly having a big season. What do you got?
Well, a big season against one team. And by the way, I heard the mystery prize was a Ryan and Sean Squishmallow. I don't know what the validity of that
No,
was.
I have to rethink about being on the Patreon then if that's
I'm
what it
just
was.
saying, the kids will love it. But no, so I'm going to continue on that Derrick Henry train, but I'm also going to go down that Derrick Henry versus the Texans train. I'm sorry, Munaf. I did not mean to wake up and choose violence against you. This is where we're heading right now. I found DraftKings has a particular bet, which I absolutely love, and that's Derrick Henry. It gives you a set of yardage in between, and each set of yardage comes with a different prop or a different set of odds. So I'm going to take Derrick Henry between 301 to 400 rushing yards against the Texans. This is at 4-1. This is at plus 400 for him to fall between 301 and 400. I will tell you right now that over the last 5 games against the Texans, he has averaged 203 yards per game against the Texans. That is how much he has owned the Texans. That's what you said. Last year, he took it easy in the last game and got you 126. We're going to say that even between, if he can get 150 per game against the Texans, that's going to be that right there, 300, well, 160. Let's give us a little bit of cushion. But if he can get 160 per game against the Texans, that hits 320. That hits your plus 400 right there. We know Derrick Henry's a beast. We know Derrick Henry gets it done against the Texans each and every time. We know that the Texans last season gave up about 170 rushing yards per game. That's 340. That still gives you between this range of 301 to 400. So if we're going to run under the assumption that Derrick Henry is going to continue his 1,000% dominance over the Texans and get somewhere in that 160 to 170 range, again, if you want the 400 plus one, that's at plus 900. So if you think that he can get his 200 yards, you might want to, get a quarter unit on that too, to get yourself covered in case he does blow up the spot against the Texans in both games that he plays them. But you want to play a little more conservative, if you just want one, maybe this 301 to 400 is where you're going to live, because asking somebody to get 200 yards every single time, that's a little bit rough. But again, I think 170 is a good expectation to have. So, I mean, like I said, play it if you want the 400 plus. I still think that's a pretty solid play at plus 900, but it's a long shot for a reason. And I think this one is a little more within the wheelhouse, because anything below 200 or anything below 300 rather, I think you're selling yourself short on that. So Derrick Henry between 301 to 400 rushing yards versus the Texans next season, 4-1, book it.
Last 5 games, like I mentioned, against the Texans, 32 carries, 211 yards, 22 carries, 212 yards, 34 carries, 250 yards, 32 carries, 219 yards, 23 carries, 126 yards. And in his career, he's averaging 6.1 yards per carry. And this could be a even bigger number, because the first 3 games in his career against the Texans, 3 attempts, 9 yards, 15 carries, 65 yards, and 6 carries, 7 yards. After that, he's just been an absolute monster against this Texans team. So again, a lot of the success isn't on the shoulders of Derrick Henry for this team to find success, especially offensively. I think a lot of that does fall on Ryan Tannehill. But if they're able to open up the passing game, especially with DeAndre Hopkins, I think that's just going to create more opportunities. I think that's just going to keep the defense honest, right? Because a lot of times we just want to see teams maybe just, crowding the box and trying to slow down Derrick Henry. But even that at times hasn't done a lot trying to stop him. And the stiff arm, we know this man is an absolute beast. They call him a King Henry for a reason here. Chris, anything more to add for King Henry here?
Nah, you guys did a really good job. I was just wondering if Rob was going to mention that over, because, maybe he's having a couple subpar games, and, he decides he wants to run for 203 yards in each game. And it's nice to know if you want to take that, you can get it at 9-1. So I like what Rob mentioned there, just in case he wants to go complete, domination mode on him.
Well, even like for his regular season, the total number for his season long is 1,150 and a half. And I'm trying to pull up the numbers that he's done exactly throughout his career. So last season, 1,538. I know we talked about the injury that he suffered in 2021, but in 8 games, he had 937. Prior to that, 2,027, 1,540, And back in 2018, 1,059 rushing yards. So again, if he's able to stay healthy, or if he does play about 13 to 14 games, I think he can definitely get over that number of 1,150 and a half rushing yards for King Henry. Chris, take us over to player prop number 3, my man. What do you got?
So let's go to your Houston Texans. And nobody's mentioned them at all, but I got
one. I'm gonna guess here since we're 2 for 2. I'm gonna make a guess because I have one left on the Texans as well.
What you got?
I'm gonna say Nico Collins over on his receiving yards.
Nope.
All right, go ahead then. That's my last one, so I'll expand. But once you're done, go ahead, Chris.
But you're close. I am taking a receiving yard prop, and I am taking the tight end, Mr. Dalton Schultz. I am going with Dalton. I like Dalton. I like Dalton a lot, man. I think probably prime of his career. He's 27 right now. Durable tight end as well. You gotta love durability if you're gonna take it over. And I know we talked about how unders have been absolute money. But I thought 500 and a half is, was a tad bit shy. So that's what the number is. I mentioned durability, 15 games he's played last 3 seasons, 3 straight in Dallas when he was, playing with Dak Prescott, of at least 575 yards or more, minimum 89 targets each year. I love that, he's the centerpiece. And we got a rookie quarterback. We just talked about it, right? So rookie quarterbacks in general are typically looking for their tight ends. They are safety blankets, middle of the field most of the time, 5-yard in, whether it's a curl or out route. But even more so for rookie quarterbacks, right? So I like that. I also like that, these kind of change this offense up a lot, right? So Cooks is out, Chris Moore is out, Jordan Atkins is out. So I'm expecting Schultz to be that safety blanket. I'm expecting him to be he is a big target. He's a big physical tight end. So I'm expecting him to be that big physical tight end and to be that safety net for CJ in the middle of the field. So for all of those reasons, I like Dalton to go over. I think he can get, upwards of close to 600 yards. Definitely shop around. Maybe even more, a little more than 600, but definitely shop around. Make sure you get the best number. The lowest number is the one you want to play if you want to take the over. And the lowest I could find it was 500 and a half yards for Mr. Dalton Schultz.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said there, Chris. And I think it kind of expands to the point on why I took Nico Collins to go over on his receiving yards as well. That number for Nico Collins is, I think it was 585 and a half is what I saw on DraftKings for Nico Collins. Let me just double check here because I should have wrote this. Yeah, 585 and a half. And it kind of ties into what you mentioned about Dalton Schultz as well, because you take a look at the stats last season for this Texans team as far as receiving yards. Brandon Cooks, 699 yards, left for Dallas, went to Dallas. Chris Moore, not on this team, 548 receiving yards last season. And then the third guy was Jordan Akins, 495 yards. None of those 3 receivers are on this roster for this upcoming season for the Texans. That's opened up opportunities for guys like Dalton Schultz and Nico Collins. And you talked about, the point that you brought up is 100% what I agree, Chris, is that we talk about tight ends outside of the big sexy names of guys like, Travis Kelce and George Kittle, that it's a security blanket thing, right? Like Dalton Schultz is going to be that blocking tight end, maybe chip a guy that's coming off the edge and just kind of find an open spot where, CJ Stroud can throw him the football and he can accumulate yards that way. And we're not asking him to get a lot here, right? Like you mentioned, he's done it. And he's gotten the targets with the Dallas Cowboys. He's gone over the yardage with the Cowboys. And the Texans really haven't gotten a lot of success from the tight end position since the days, I would go all the way back to when they had Owen Daniels on this roster, and that's been years and years. I know last season, Jordan Akins, as far as yardage-wise, had a pretty good season for this Texans team. But prior to that, it was just a tight end carousel for this Texans team, and hopefully it feels like they've found at least a guy, at least for a year or two, in Dalton Schultz where they can have that security blanket and throw him the football. Which led me to Nico Collins as well. And my third prop was over 585 and a half receiving yards for this wide receiving group. Like I mentioned, the top 3 receiving yards leaders for this Texans team are no longer on this team. Nico Collins is now going to be your number one wide receiver. And there was flashes of Nico Collins being that guy for this Texans team, right? They haven't had a number one wide receiver since we talked about DeAndre Hopkins, when at that time was traded over to the Arizona Cardinals for a bag of chips. But I think it's time now for Nico Collins to take that next step and be that number one guy for this Texans team. And again, if you're going to have success for a guy like CJ Stroud in his rookie season, you need a reliable tight end like, Chris mentioned with Dalton Schultz. And also asking Nico Collins for what he did last season. I believe he was in the realm of 481 yards. Asking him to get 100 more yards or 106 more yards, especially with those top three guys no longer on this roster, I think that's definitely doable for him. So my third prop was over 585.5 for Nico Collins. Rod, thoughts on both Dalton Schultz and Nico Collins for this upcoming season? Don, I'm sorry this turned into a Texans podcast, but here we are.
Well, it's the AFC South. I mean, you got to talk to somebody, right? Everybody knows the Jaguars are going to do what they're going to do. But no, listen, and you're right. Tight ends instantly become a rookie's best friend, especially knowing that you got a good one like Dalton Schultz, who has bailed out Dak Prescott for most of his career on a lot of Dak Prescott's shortcomings. So I think he could do that for a young CJ Stroud. I think CJ Stroud needs that to happen. So any underneath stuff that he can get, Dalton Schultz is good enough to break away and get a few more extra yards out of a catch than is what necessarily is thrown to him. So I don't have his yards after catch numbers up in front of me, but I will say that, again, Dak's numbers have been inflated in the years because of Dalton Schultz's ability to sort of get away after the catch. So I like that. And then for Nico Collins, something's got to be his year, right? I mean, this is probably going to be it for him to prove something, because if he doesn't prove something, then we're moving on to greener pastures. So, I mean, look, the good news, Munaf, is that the Texans offense has nowhere to go but up. So you can
exactly
be
what it is
this year about something.
Yeah, and again, this Texans team has been in a quarterback carousel as well, and a head coaching carousel as well. It's over the last couple of years. We talked about David Culley and Lovie Smith, and then since Deshaun Watson got traded, it's been Davis Mills and guys that have been trying to fill in. And the crazy part about this Texans team is that when you talk about quarterbacks, it was David Carr when the franchise first was founded in in Houston.
Baby, go Fresno State.
And Matt Schaub for a couple years there for this Texans team, and then Deshaun Watson. Now, hopefully, with the second overall pick in CJ Stroud, hopefully he is that guy for this Texans team for this upcoming season. All right, so that is all three of our player props for this AFC South division. That will lead us to one order of business left here. That is going to be our best bets for the AFC South division. Chris, why don't you lead us off, my man? What's your best bet for this division?
Yeah, so real quick, just going back to Dalton one more time. I want to make sure I mention so the number, the 500.5 receiving yards, only available on Caesars. Okay. So that tells me that the books may not know where to put them, which it means I like it even more because we don't have a big market, right? Minus 115 with the odds, and I just wanted to make sure I threw that out there. As far as best bets, I think it's got to be Mr. King Henry. I think so, just because for one, you're getting it at plus money, right? If you want to wait for a bet, you definitely want to make sure you're at least getting as close to plus 100 as you possibly can. And like I said, this was plus 100 over on Caesars. I love him, just to be able to score 10 touchdowns. I think this will be the easiest one of the three that I picked that could actually cash as well. When we're taking unders, the downside is we do have to wait the entirety of the season, but we're taking it over. Man, we can potentially have this money by week 11, week 12 if he starts to do something a little crazy at the beginning. Though he has a 3 or 4 touchdown day Sunday, which is totally possible with King Henry. So I like Derrick Henry to go over his 9.5 touchdowns. And the only other point I'll mention is like I said, Tannehill is getting old, man. It ages me to think that Tannehill is in his 11th season in the NFL because I remember when he first came in. But I like Derrick Henry to go over his 9.5 touchdowns at plus 100. Best bet.
Yeah, again, like Chris said, make sure to shop around for the best number. We mentioned on every single pod because I do see DraftKings put up a number for Dalton Schultz at 550.5 for his number. So at 500.5, obviously you're getting a 50-yard discount there if you do like the over like we do for Dalton Schultz. And going to your point about Ryan Tannehill before we get to Rod's best bet is that he's looking over his shoulder as well, right? You have Malik Willis in the shadows, maybe Will Levis eventually once he develops a little more. But I know Malik Willis, looked a little rough last season. But when we talk about some of these quarterbacks that they need at least a full season and then 2 off seasons to kind of really get their rhythm and figure out the playbook at the professional level. So again, if Ryan Tannehill first half of the season, or we get to the back end of the year where he's not looking very good, I think we may see a breath of fresh air that Malik Willis comes in and possibly can be that starting quarterback for this Titans team. So going back to Chris' best bet, it's going to be Derrick Henry over on his rushing touchdowns of 9.5. Rod, best bet for you, my man. What do we got?
It ages you, Chris, that Tannehill's barely in the league. Man, it ages me that I watched Steve McNair and Eddie George play in the Tennessee Titans stadium back in the day. So you want to talk about age? That was before they even were the Tennessee Titans. They were still the Tennessee Oilers. But all right, mine is another Derrick Henry as well. I'm taking this 301 to 400 rushing yards against the Texans. That's at plus 400. I did find, though, and I don't know if maybe I was misreading it or if I just sort of glanced over, but the over 400 is at 12-1 right now. So that's even better if you want to sprinkle something on that over 400 total yards against the Texans. 12-1 over there on DraftKings. That's a very juicy number. But yeah, I mean, listen, I'll give out both of those. So just cover your bets, hedge on the 400, but go after this 1200 because he's going to get his yards against the Texans. There's short of injury. There is no stop. And in fact, I think even on injury, they'll give him 200 yards just because it's the Texans. So I like this bet. It's Derrick Henry. Chris already talked about him and we already talked about him at length, but yeah, 301 to 400 yards against the Texans. Take that at plus 400 and then bump it up to 400 at 12-1 and roll the dice on there. Let it ride, right? Company motto. Let's do it.
And when you're so used to giving out 4-1s and 12-1 on the NASCAR gambling podcast, you bring it over to the Propcast. So it's so easy for Rod to cash on those bets. So yeah, definitely love it. I'm not going to argue against Derrick Henry owning the Houston Texans. So I did see a rumor that there might be a statue outside for Derrick Henry in the works. But all right, for my best bet, I'm going to go Nico Collins over 585.5 receiving yards. And I think that's we discussed it at in volumes and in depth of how there's a shift now for this Texans offense, right? We talked about the rookie quarterback in CJ Stroud, but again, for the reasons why Chris likes Dalton Schultz and why I like Nico Collins is those top 3 guys last season that led this team in yardage receiving wise are no longer on this team, right? And that means that guys behind them, which was 4th on the list, was Nico Collins, now has to step up. Jordan Akins was another guy, 481 yards. Now you have a reliable tight end in Dalton Schultz that can come over for this team and be that safety blanket for a guy like CJ Stroud. But I feel like this is a year where Nico Collins has to take that step up to be that number 1 guy for this offense for the Houston Texans. We've seen flashes of it on in training camp where he's made some incredible catches. I know it's training camp and we try to hype up the team as much as we can for your respective teams, but it's Nico Collins, it's John Mechie, and then it's Tank Dell, right? And we saw what Tank Dell did in the first game for this Texans team. So again, Nico Collins, I think will be that guy. 585.5 is very conservative. Last season, like I mentioned, 481 yards for him. Asking him to get 107 more, I think is definitely doable for him in this offense for the Texans. So my best bet, Nico Collins, over 585.5 passing yards, and you can find that currently over on DraftKings. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of the Propcast. AFC South season-long player props in the books. We will be back later this week for the NFC North, I believe, but it will be back in some form or fashion. I'll double-check that. While, Rod, anything else we want to mention before we get out of here?
No, sir. Just find me on the NASCAR Gambling Podcast where I am giving out 14-1. Spoiler alert, there probably will be a couple of those coming up on Tuesday's show because we're back on a road course, so a lot of fun over there. And yeah, just check me out on Twitter at RJ Villagomez.
Chris, anything else, my man?
Nah, that was it, man. Enjoyed the show. Of course, looking forward to I feel like we've been kind of, I don't know if Munaf did this to us or not, Rob, but I feel like he kind of gave us the, let's get these ones out there. Let's get these divisions out the way first. Because I think we got some good ones coming, right?
Yeah, that was gonna say, this is my second year running. I know that's how Munaf works. It's like, let's get the ones out of the way that are blah, and then we'll get to the good stuff later.
Absolutely. So yeah, I'm excited to be here as always. I've enjoyed the previous ones, and definitely looking forward to some of the bigger names, some of the bigger teams. With a little bit more higher aspirations. As we start to get into some of these other divisions. Extremely excited to kind of deep dive into those and see if we get some some conflicting prop bets, or if we're all kind of on the same page or not.
Hey, we started with the appetizers. Maybe you didn't like the appetizers. I know we started with the NFC West, the AFC East. All right, the AFC South, but now we have maybe the main course coming up. Like I mentioned, we have the NFC North coming up in our next pod, which will be on Wednesday. So look out for this then. Excuse me. And then we have the AFC West, which is always intriguing. The NFC East left. We have the NFC South left, and then to close it out, the AFC North, possibly the more exciting as far as season-long player props goes for that division. So, like I mentioned, if you haven't already, we've already covered two divisions already. Go back and listen to those. The NFC West and the AFC East. The AFC South done today, and like I mentioned, we'll be back on Wednesday for the NFC North division for our season-long player props. If you haven't already, go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. Come support the network. We do everything for free. All of our content is for free. If you want to show support, go ahead and go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com. Come join the Patreon page. It's a lot of fun kicking it with the guys that have signed up in the Discord channel as well. And again, like I mentioned, a lot of great weekly contests that are happening for patrons only. And again, the season-long NFL win totals contest. First place gets $1,000 in cold hard cash. All right, good luck with your bets this week. We'll be back on Wednesday, like I mentioned. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's rake these books off and let it ride.